Welcome to the Marvelous Work and a Wonder Worldwide Radio Talk Show. At no time during the history of our world has a place existed where a person can go and ask any question about their human existence and have that question answered with authority, clarity, and completeness. During this radio talk show, many of the great and marvelous things that have been hidden from our understanding since the foundation of this world will be revealed. We've always known these real truths. They exist, hidden in the back of our mind within the confines of our imagination. Within the human mind, seeds of imagination sprout into belief systems of philosophy and religion. But these do not answer the basic questions of our existence. Who are we, and why do we exist? Religion and philosophy have produced fruits of discord, prejudice, and hate. These things are destroying our humanity. The purpose of the Marvelous Work and a Wonder is to introduce the real truth about our existence as human beings. Within its answers, the solutions to our human problems are found. Most of our problems are a cause of our ignorance, and our current experience upon this earth manifests the influence of this ignorance. This show is where current reality meets real truth.
All right, welcome to the Marvelous Work and a Wonder television show today. And like we talked about last week, we are joined with Ida Smith again this day, and we're happy to go over a little of the history in Ida's life. And we want to remind you that if you'd like to call in today with any questions for Ida, she's here to answer any questions that you might have regarding her history or the things that she's experienced. Our phone number for the call-in is 801-691-1491, so you can feel free to call in with any questions or comments that you might have for her later in the show. And as you're already aware, Christopher's not in the studio today, but we're excited that we're going to have him again next week. So starting again next week, you'll want to tune in to hear the message from the messenger. So we're happy to be here, and we're excited to be able to share what we've learned about Ida and all the fun and not so fun experiences that she's had in her life, but nevertheless, it's all been a learning experience and for all of us. So thank you for sharing your story with us, Ida. Before we get into it, was there anything that you wanted to comment on, or?
No, this has been a fun experience to do this with you.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to the messenger coming back myself.
I think we all are.
So, but the idea, if anybody wants to ask a question of me, a good time would be with this time in the next couple of hours, because I will be no longer here coming next Sunday.
That's right. So the phone number to call if you have any questions would be 801-691-1491. So you can call in and ask us a question, or ask Ida a question, and or comment on any of the show, even the shows that you've seen in the past that have had Ida in it with her story as well. So we do have some videos that we've prepared today that we want to share with you that has some information that we all thought would be compelling for you all to know. So we'll go ahead and roll that video clip right now.
What is it about?
The video clip is about, we filmed this with Ida at the Salt Lake Cemetery.
Yes, Today would be a good time if anybody has a question on this, because what you're going to see in this video has been alarming to a lot of people because of what I did here. And people have commented on what was I thinking. So this will help you know what I was thinking. And if you have any questions when we get through with this, this would be a good time to call. So
All right.
let's see it. Well, for those who are viewing this, we are located in the Salt Lake City Cemetery. And just behind me is the stone that has my parents' name on it, my mother and my father. And all of the children's names are on the back side of it. My father, who was Joseph Fielding Smith, and my mother, Ruth Pingree. Daddy was born in the 1800s. My baby sister used to take great joy in telling her little playmates that her father was born in the last century. So he was born in 1899, my mother in 1907. Daddy died in 64 and my mother in 92. So Daddy died way too long. He just turned 65 when he died. And my mother lived until she was 92, so she was 85. Terrific parents, actually. My father made us responsible for ourselves. Something happened to me. It was an incredible moment in my life as I look back on it. I was probably maybe 15, and I asked my father if I could do a particular thing, and he said, well, I rather you wouldn't, but it's entirely up to you. And I thought, oh, crap. That makes me totally responsible. I can't even remember what it was, but I didn't do whatever it was. But I've thought about that a lot in the years since, because he never took our monkeys that were ours. He just kept them on our own back. So I could never, say, well, you're responsible. I had to be responsible for everything that I did. It was my responsibility. And he raised us. We were raised like that, to be responsible for what we did, what we said, what we ever. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful for my parents. I'm sorry my father died so young, because he was only 65, and right now I'm nearly 83. When I think of them that much older than my father when he died, it's stunning to me. 65 seems awfully young to me at this point. Back more than 3 decades ago, I learned that the person who was in charge of who got to be buried here died, and that responsibility had been given over to my Aunt Margaret, who was one of my father's sisters. For some reason I did not know at all and understand at the time, I became obsessed with getting a plot in the Salt Lake Cemetery, which seems like a crazy thing to do because I was really a lot younger and it was going to be a long time before I would need it. But I can only describe it as an obsession to get it. And so I contacted my aunt, and she was in the hospital at the time, and things were a little bit iffy, how she was going to be doing. And if she died before I was able to get a plot. So anyway, I went to the hospital to talk to her about it. And she was very gracious, and she told me there was only one plot left in the Smith family plot, that just one left. And looking into the legalities of everything, she learned that in order for me to do that, I would have to have the permission of all of my siblings. Well, at that time, most of them, all but one, was married already. And my sister already is on a stone in Denver. She and her husband have put up a long time before he died. And so all it takes is her death date, and that's where she'll be buried. And one of my brothers in southern Utah has a family plot there. And none of my siblings were going to look after this for them. And so I was able to get the plot. And I had to sign the papers, pay for it, and all of these things. and got that taken care of a long, long time ago. And I put it away in my little lock box in my bedroom and really just forgot about it. But for some reason, it gave me great peace of mind to know that it was there for me, because I was single then and I was older than some people thought I should be before I got married. So I had this plot. And I was in California, and I moved back to Utah in 1978. And I thought, well, maybe I will die here, and it really is a good idea that I have that plot. I have to jump to 27. And in 27, I learned about the sealed portion. Started reading it, and eventually met Christopher. And we had I don't even remember the conversation we had about the cemetery. I don't remember how I talked to him about my plot here. I just don't remember any of that, how it actually transpired. He talked to me about the possibility of having that particular plot. Since it was the last one, there are no more plots available here, to do what he wanted to do. And over the years, I had gotten further and further to the idea of, I don't want to be buried. I have really taken pretty good care of myself. I think that the inside of me is in really, really good condition. And I had gone to a thing at the library, next to the library, several years ago, showing dead bodies and all of the internal things from dead bodies. And it was a riveting thing to walk through. There was one particular place where they had different shades of lungs of people who had died, some who smoked, some who didn't, etc., and in livers and in kidneys and what they looked like in different bodies. And I thought I could see what a dreadful one looked at and could see what a really healthy one looked like. And I thought, I think I would like to give my body to the University of Utah so that those kids who were, those 20-somethings who were trying to become doctors could have an experience of looking at what an inside of a dead body looks like if it's been taken care of. And I thought, that's what I'd like to do with my body. And so when Christopher talked about this possibility, I said, I think that's a great idea. Because I was thrilled that we would do this for Hiram and what we have done to this. So I said yes, that would be fine. So we came together to the cemetery here, and we had to go through changing the ownership and etc. And we did everything that we had to do to make this all legal and everything. And then he put me in charge of having it happen. I said, okay, I'd never been in charge of putting anything together, but that meant I had to kind of determine what the stone would look like, how big it would, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he gave me information that needed to go on it. And in a few moments, we'll go on both sides of that so you can see what is on both sides of that. There was a young man that helped me with that, and he wanted it done by a certain time, and then I had to figure out just exactly how it would get paid for and whatnot, people who would donate to getting the thing done. And so I spent a lot of time up here then with drawings and suggestions and what exactly the kinds of things we want on it and whatnot. And I decided I wanted to have the plates on it. And so I worked with a outfit south of me in Utah County. Went out there and he did several different drawings because I wanted it 3D. I wanted not just a picture of it, but 3D. And he showed me a work they had done in metals. And we were excited about that so that we could have that on this. And then decide, okay, what's the decorations going to be and it's all this other stuff. So there were a lot of trips up here, down south, to get the information, go to get the plates, and et cetera, et cetera. And finally we did have the thing up and ready, and it was dedicated. And so then I came up, and there was a large group that was here when it was dedicated. It was a day not unlike this one. Cool, starting to rain. We were glad we had coats on. But that's why this monument is here. That's why. Now, a lot of people have not been happy about this monument. I'm sure the church was very upset about it. We were concerned about vandalism, yeah. And we have had that. At one point, not long after it had been put in, there was a group that came with chains and everything, pulled the thing over. And it had to be reset, and it goes down deep, so it was a lot to pull it over. And they did damage, but it was put back. And so a lot of people have come to see it and wondered, I'm sure, and very stressful to a lot of people, and feel that it's just a horrible thing to have been done. But at that point in time, I had, of course, read the sealed portion. I believe very, very strongly that indeed Christopher, I hate to use the word reincarnation, because when you understand exactly why we have so many different lives, and that Joseph knew we had many different lives, it made sense to me. And but not everybody has felt that way. So missionaries coming by, I'm sure, have been horrified and wondered, and a lot of people have been very, very angry. But after that one major thing, they tried to destroy it. It's been pretty much left alone. But that's why this is here, and I did have a hand in it. I did, and my family wasn't very happy about it, but it happened. And I'm not sorry that it happened, because I think if people walk by here and you can look at the bottom of the stone, and it it even gives you where you can go on the internet to get information about it. And I don't know that there are too many stones that have email addresses on them, but this one does. And so if anybody is interested and really sincerely wants to know more information about it, it's very accessible. And you get on there and you Google Marvelous Work and a Wonder, or thesealedportion.com, and you can find information all about this stone and why it's where it is. The more I learned about the Marvelous Work and a Wonder over the last number of years, 6 years, I've learned that nobody's going to be preaching the gospel of this to anybody. When you read the Book of Mormon, it talks about the marvelous work and a wonder, and that we're going to get it. We're going to get the real truth, but it's not going to be handed to us on a platter. Anybody that gets it is going to have to go after it for themselves. And if you go to Isaiah 29, particularly in Joseph Smith's translation of the Bible in Isaiah 29, and you go to the Book of Mormon, where both of these things talks about the marvelous work and a wonder, that it is going to be available in the latter days. And we ultimately learned that the final truth about that would be given to the world in 2012. But it's not going to be in headlines. It's not going to be on NBC or CBS or whatever. It's there, but you have to look for it. It's like if the kids are going on a treasure hunt, and there are all kinds of things out there that can guide you to it, but you have to find it for yourself. And so the scriptures tell us that. You have to find it for yourself. You go to Ether 4, and it's very specific about when it would happen. It tells us in Ether 4 that after we have the sealed portion, which means we would have the entire gold plates. Then, right after that, very short period after that, we would get John's explanation of Revelations. Nobody in the world for 2,000 years has known what the Billy Hill he was talking about. Only John knew what he was talking about. And because nobody knew ever what he was talking about, it came through pretty much the way John wrote it, which is terrific. But nobody knew what it meant. So after that book was published, it said, then you will get John's explanation of the Revelation. Then, after that, there will be more books. More books. So, okay, here are all of these ways of finding the prize, finding the marvelous work and a wonder, which is the prize we're after, because we're after real truth. But if you think that if any person thinks that they already have all the truth there is, they'll never find it because they aren't looking for it. You've got to look for it. You've got to go after it yourself. And you think, I've got all the truth that there is to have. Why would you ever find it? Because you wouldn't be looking. In other words, people have got to be looking for real truth in order for them to find it. It will not be handed on a silver platter without something that they're going to do to work to get it. So all of that makes sense to me. And if I've heard it once, I've heard it 100 times. Do not preacher. It's not your job. There is a true messenger on the planet. It's his job. He will do that. You are not supposed to do it. You're not called to do that. There will be no group, no church organized. It's something that people have to get for themselves. So by having this thing behind me here, this crazy monument to Hiram Smith and ultimately to Christopher, people come along here and they think, is this part of the puzzle? Is this something I should really be looking into? How somebody can come by and look at this and not be, gee, I'd like to know what this is all about. Some people just see it and get mad instead of thinking, maybe there's something here, maybe I should look into this. If they do that, as I said, it's on there, what they can Google to get information. And when you Google sealportion.com, you'll find it. Or the marvelous work and a wonder, you'll find it. And then all you have to do, read the books, read the information. But you have to keep in mind that when Joseph and Hiram were in the jail, just before they were killed, they'd been there for a while, but there were two other individuals with them. And when the mob came and they started shooting and coming up the stairs and whatnot, Joseph knew he was going to be killed. He had not wanted Hiram to be with him then, but Hiram refused to leave him. He said, I'm not going to leave you. There's no way. And so just before Joseph was shot and killed, he made the statement that is on this, that has been put on this monument. The two men who were left alive after the shooting was over heard what was said. And when the Quorum of the 12 got together later, and Brigham Young came home from one of his missions and heard what had been said, because it says, in the Carthage, Illinois jail on June 27, 1844, in the presence of Willard Richards and John Taylor, and just a few moments before Joseph and Hiram Smith were murdered, Joseph smiled upon his older brother, took Hiram's right hand in his right hand, and said the following, one day it shall be you who shall finish what I could not. May the Lord's work be cut short in the righteousness of what you will do for the Father. I love you, my brother, my friend. With that prophecy, the resurrected Joseph Smith, Jr. returned to the earth on June 16th, 1987. And with further instructions to him then, reincarnated Brother Hiram, who was born into this world as Christopher Mark Nemelka, to commence the, quote, work of the Father, quote, known among the inhabitants of this world as the marvelous work and a wonder. Because Brigham Young saw that, and I thought, wait a minute, Hiram's dead. How can he possibly do it? He's dead. And so Brigham decided that maybe that meant that his posterity would do that. And so immediately Brigham Young went to Emma, not to Emma, but to Mary, and convinced her of this, and convinced her that she and her children should come west with him. Emma didn't know about this until later, and it caused a rift between those two families that was horrendous. It breaks my heart when I think about it, because there were no two brothers ever closer than Hiram and Joseph. They were inseparable. And to separate those families in that manner. So all of Hiram's children came west. Emma and her children did not come west. And the schism between those two families lasted for a very, very long time. Because it wasn't until the 1970s, more than 150 years later, were serious attempts made to bring those two families back together. And it's taken a while because the hate has been so deep and so broad. And I mentioned before that when I was growing up, I was very much aware of how many people said very negative things about Emma because she didn't come west. And Emma was pregnant with her last child when he was killed. And she was in no condition to go west at that point. But there was no love lost between Emma and Brigham Young. And so none of Joseph's family came. And it wasn't until more than 150 years later before even one single descendant of Joseph's came into the LDS Church. So this has been taken over the last 40 years, about not quite 40 years. They've been trying to put those two families back together again. And just this last year, we had a reunion with those two families in Salt Lake, which is great. But there was a long, long time when they were separated. And of course, Brigham Young didn't understand what it was how Joseph could say this. But the Church Archives has this information because those apostles knew Joseph said that before he died. They also know that there are too many stories that people have written in the early years when Joseph talked about multiple lives. The church does not teach that, but Joseph referred to eternal lives, plural. Even as a teenager, I asked anybody, I said, why do they say multiple lives instead of multiple life? I didn't understand then, and it was a long time before I found out, okay, that's why that makes sense, and it does make sense. And so for this particular monument to have the writing on it that it does makes enormous sense to me. And I have no regrets for what I did in seeing to it that it was put up. And I know the church is not happy with it, and I know my family wasn't happy with it. But it's truth. It's real truth. And at this point in my life, I really don't want to deal with anything that isn't real truth. If real truth is on the earth, dagnabbit, that's what I want. And so that's where we're at. And that's why this is here. That's why this monument is here. And that's why I am here sitting today to tell you about it. How it came about, why I had that particular plot. Because when I did that, I didn't know why I was driven to get it. But the moment that Christopher talked to me about it, I thought, that's why I had to do that. And I think now, because of what I know that I didn't know before, about my own essence and who we really are, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I think my essence was just on my case to get that. And I listened because it didn't make sense to me, but I thought, I'm so driven to it, I have to do it. So I'm glad I did. So that's why all of this business right here. Because there's no missionary work being done whatsoever by the Marvelous Work and the Wonder group with Joseph's descendants, I have no idea what any of those descendants know, because a lot of them have joined the church now. There have been quite a few who have joined the church now. And this summer when they were having the reunion, I desperately wanted to go and just shout from the rooftops, read Joseph's book. Read Joseph's book so you get his real, really what happened with Joseph Smith. So to my knowledge, none of his descendants have learned about it. None that I have heard. That's not that no one has, but I am not aware of any of them that have learned about it. Hopefully someday, if they would just read Joseph's biography, they would get exactly what happened, because Joseph, before he died, had said, "No man knows my history." And so his descendants have no idea what Joseph was all about. All of the biographies that have been written by Joseph since that time have been taken from people's different journals and whatnot. But since nobody in Joseph's lifetime knew anything about what he was doing and why he was doing about it, there's a big black hole there as far as getting information to Joseph's descendants. And since there will be no missionary work to them from the Marvelous Work and a Wonder, if they are wondering enough and they still want to keep looking and looking and looking, they'll find it, but only when they want it themselves. Anyway, this is a very nice cemetery, and it's very peaceful. And since there are so many prophets who are buried in this general vicinity, and certainly a lot of the Smiths, people who come by here, it's right on the road there, and see this, and don't take the opportunity to find out what in the world is this all about, will be held responsible for it, because we are all responsible for what we do, what we believe, what we learn. And we know now that we'll have to make the decision, because nobody's going to be knocking on our doors. And before we came down here, we knew that we were going to be coming to this crazy game of mortality, and that when we come down here, we would not remember who we were, because we wouldn't have memories from before. And so that we would be, us to find, okay, how are you going to handle things when you can't remember, when you just can't remember? Well, the temple ceremony for the LDS Church kind of wrote this all out for us. Basically, we knew we were going to lose our memories when we came down here. And so we were very concerned, because after we had watched what people do in other worlds, and see what horrible, horrible things people were doing to each other. And we would say things to our mother like, we would never behave that way. We would never do those horrible things. And our mothers would just smile. She said, we'll see, we'll see. And so we were concerned that I said, okay, when we get through with all of this mortality thing that this dig that we're gonna go into, before Christ comes to us at the end of that period of time, please, can we be absolutely sure that we will be given real truth? Yes. You will be given real truth, because then we can, find it and everything will be wonderful. But if it is on the earth and we don't find it, that's our responsibility, because it'll be our responsibility to find it before Christ comes. Now's the time. Real truth has been on the earth officially since June of 2012. We have until 2145 before the Savior comes again, and we have maybe a couple more incarnations to do that. But it's here now, and if somebody really, really wants to be sure, look for it, take the hint, and do it for yourself. So on the top it says, in memory of the, quote, one like unto the Son of Man, quote. And this is the quote. And I looked and beheld a white cloud, and upon the cloud one sat like unto the Son of Man, having on his head a golden crown, and in his hand a sharp sickle. That's Revelations 14:14-20. Hiram Smith and Christopher Nemelka. And on the bottom, translator of the sealed portion of the gold plates. And then a website, for crying out loud. There it is. Now, if somebody comes by and looks on both sides of this, I don't know how it's possible for somebody to not want to look into it further. I mean, here's the opportunity. It's right there. How can they possibly get away with this? How can they say this if it isn't true? And if somebody with a desire to know the truth, with real intent, doesn't make an effort to find out if this is true or not, it's their responsibility. Because we have our free agency. It's possible for us to do it, whatever we want to do. And if we want the truth, we can go after it. Nobody's impeding us from going after truth if we really, really want it. It's available. It's easy to get. All of the books that are on this thing down here, this sealedportion.com, all of the books are there for free. You can download them. If you want to have a copy that you can mark up and have in your hands like I had to do, it's possible to do that. But if you can't, you can read it online, line upon line, line upon line. It's free, as all truth should always be free to everybody equally. So here it is. The opportunity's there. All you have to do is read the books.
All right. Well, that
Whoa.
was. You were there.
I was there.
I was there.
I'm really glad to have seen this today, because if you had asked me a half an hour after we got through filming it and asked me what I had said, I'm not sure I could have told you.
Yeah.
So thanks to Tony and putting on it all together.
Yeah.
But it's all true.
It's incredible.
And it's available to anybody, and it's free of charge. So go after it.
This is what it looks like if you want to get it in book form. But it's free online, so you can download it online and read it from your computer or your iPad or anything that you have. But like you said, it's a life changer.
And so anybody who by chance has been, I don't know, we may have 3 people watching the show today, maybe 4.
Maybe 5.
All I have to do is go look for themselves and find out for themselves. And if anybody still has a question, Ida, why did you do it? You want me to make it any clearer? Today would be a good day to call because we're not going to be here next week.
That's right, right. And the phone number is on the screen, but it's 801-691-1491. So if you'd like to comment about the video or just have a question for Ida, give us a call. We're here. So yeah, I'm glad that we had the opportunity to film that at the cemetery. It was an incredible story, and like I'm kind of like you, where I was there, you know, and I heard everything you said there, but until you go back and you listen to it again and again, it's you say so many amazing, profound things that it's like, I don't remember that part, but you know, but it hits you again, and it's just so powerful. It makes us emotional, you know, to see you and to hear your stories and to hear, you know, your experience. That it's there's no words for it, and it's something that I think I'm so grateful that we've had the opportunity to film this. So.
Thank you, and thank you, Tony.
Yes, thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
Well, you know, I got a chapter about the lives, about, it's Alma chapter 40, and maybe you want to talk a little bit about the multiple lives.
Oh, okay. So we were looking for the scripture that you were referring to before the program started, and we put a little call in to see if we could get some help with the scripture, but Tony's going to go ahead and put it up on the screen, and that was the scripture that you were wondering about. So it is Alma what?
Alma 40, chapter 8.
Alma 40?
Chapter 40, verse 8.
Alma chapter 40, verse 8. So it says, "Now whether there is more than one time appointed for men to rise, it mattereth not. For all do not die at once, and this mattereth not. All is as one day with God, and time only is measured unto men."
Yeah, that's actually the whole chapter. If you read the whole chapter, it deals with it.
Oh, okay. So is that kind of what
yes,
you're
that's
referring
exactly
to?
that's exactly. But
Okay.
remember, as Tony pointed out earlier today, half the world believes in reincarnation, that there we have more chance than one
That's right.
time at life. And LDS people have not been raised that way to believe that. I really appreciate that particular quote. But when you think about it, just seriously for a minute, what's the point of doing all of this mortality stuff? I mean, why? What are we here to learn something? Are we here to have experiences, see how we deal with things, or whatever? And if you think, okay, if there is a God in heaven, if there is, can we count on him loving all of us equally? Does he love some of us more than he loves others of us? I mean, I would like to think that if we have a God up there that is our Father, that he loves all of us equally. In which case, how in the world is it fair for somebody to get to stay for 90 or 100 years and another an hour or a month, maybe a week, and that's it? That's the only chance? And what about different periods of time in the history of the world? and different countries in the world. Is it fair that somebody is born with a silver spoon in its little mouth and has anything it wants? It's a whole life, and others who never see the inside of a bathroom in their lives. If it's going to be fair, how is it possible to just only have once?
Okay, so we've got a quick phone call.
Okay.
This is Marvelous Work and a Wonder TV show. Did you have a question or a comment for Ida?
Yes, I do. This is Bob Newton calling in Harriman.
Yeah.
Hold on, let me turn it up for just a minute here. Oops. Okay, sorry. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, say again.
What was your name? Can you hear me?
Turn my mic down here so I can hear you. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. We couldn't hear you very well right there in the beginning. What's your name?
This is Bob Newton in Harriman.
Oh, hi, Bob. How are you?
I'm good. How's it going?
We're doing great. Thank you for asking.
So is this, are we on live right now? Or?
Yeah, yes, we are. Yeah, so talk really loud.
Okay. Am I on right now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to ask Ida a question, and I've been around her for a while, and I've always been a little confused as to her genealogy, and I don't know that it really matters, but we human beings are a curious lot, and her father's name on the video was Joseph Fielding, but there was a Mormon president who was Joseph Fielding Smith, and before him Joseph F. Smith, and so I'm a little confused as to who is who, and I wish you'd clarify that.
Okay. In the Smith family, it's over and over and over and over. Then there are a million Josephs, and they're all Joseph Fielding, but Hiram's son was Joseph F. Smith, but it was a Joseph Fielding, but he went by Joseph F. And then that man had over 50 children, and he had 5 wives, 6 wives ultimately, but 5 wives. And I think all of them had a Joseph and a Hiram, multiple Josephs and multiple Hirams. And so Joseph F. Smith, who was Hiram's son, had a grandson who was Joseph Fielding. And then there were, in that line, there were more Josephs and whatever. And so my father, if you go Hiram to Joseph F. Smith, to Joseph Fielding, from Joseph F. Smith to Hiram Smith, and then my father was another Joseph F. Smith, who went by Joseph F., but it was also Fielding. Does that help you? Or is you still confused?
I think it does.
Okay. From in my particular line, it goes Hiram Joseph, Hiram Joseph, Hiram Joseph. And then my brother Hiram has a Joseph. And he has a Hiram. So it is confusing. It is confusing to the family as well as to outsiders. Anything else, Bob?
No, that's all I was curious about. Anyway, I appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks for calling.
Thanks for calling.
That's good. Actually, I got Monica sent a better scripture here.
Oh, okay.
Same thing, Alma, chapter 40, verse 4 and 5.
Okay, so this might be the one that you were thinking
Okay.
of as, Behold, there is a time appointed that all shall come forth from the dead. Now when this time cometh, no one knows, but God knoweth the time which is appointed. Now whether there shall be one time, or a second time, or a third time, that men shall come forth from the dead, it mattereth not. For God knoweth all these things, and it sufficeth me to know that this is the case, that there is a time appointed that all shall rise from the dead.
Yes, that's another
that
one.
the
Perfect,
one?
perfect. Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay.
So when we think about, multiple lives, and you think about, oh my gosh, I get another chance at this. I mean, we don't know that because we don't have our memories. We don't know that.
Yeah.
It's a proposition that makes sense, But if you can just get past that stumbling block and realize that in all fairness, one time isn't going to be enough. I mean, think of all of the soldiers that were killed in their youth. We're just teenagers and they're gone already. Yeah. Or babies that live for only a week or a month and they're gone. And no other chance for them to do that. And I've mentioned before that it's a good idea, if you want to know Joseph Smith, to read his biography, the one that is official and authorized. And in that, you will learn that with Joseph was very, very close to Alvin, his older brother. And Alvin was an enormous influence on Joseph as he was growing up. They were very, very close. But Alvin was agnostic. He was an atheist. He knew the Bible very well, but he didn't care much about religion. And so when Joseph finished the plates and we had the Book of Mormon, and then all that happened that there was a church formed, Alvin had to go. He had to go because he would have been very upset with Joseph if he'd been alive when the church was organized and all of this stuff. So he lost his older brother when he was still very young. But in the Joseph's biography, we learn that later, one of Joseph's children came back and had been his older brother in another life. And you think about all of these things and you start making sense about a lot of things we don't understand if we cannot accept the fact that we have more than one life.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Tony's got something for us to watch and something to think about here. So we'll watch this next video here real quick.
Okay. And now, one of the biggest questions of life. What happens when it's over? Heaven? Hell? Nothing? Or might there be a fourth possibility, reincarnation? Could we come back as someone else? Here's Chris Cuomo with two down-to-earth parents who thought they understood the mysteries of life. That is, until their toddler began to talk.
On March 3rd, 1945, a 21-year-old Navy fighter pilot on a mission over the Pacific was shot down by Japanese artillery. His name might well have been forgotten, were it not for the remarkable, some might say unbelievable story of a little boy named James.
Okay, this is really tough. I need somebody to help me.
All right, I'm the volunteer. What do you want me to do?
Okay, I'll just go climb this thing and you have to hold me in case I fall.
Done.
James Leiniger is all boy, 6 years old and full of spirit.
This is a special plane. It goes in reverse. You don't see a lot of that.
James knows a lot about planes, especially war planes.
What kind of airplane is that?
It's a Corsair.
His parents, Andrea and Bruce Leiniger, say from an early age James would play with nothing else.
He was obsessed with airplanes. If you look around the house, that's all you'll see. Airplanes, helicopters, aircraft carriers.
But then, when he was 2, the planes James loved suddenly began to give him frequent and frightening nightmares.
I'd wake him up and he'd be screaming and he'd always be laying on his back kicking his feet up at the ceiling. And I'd say, "Baby, what were you dreaming about?" He'd say, "Airplane crash on fire, little man can't get out."
They sound like typical kiddie nightmares, but Andrea says they went on the same way for months. Maybe too much TV, but James was just 2 and his parents say only watching Barney and Teletubbies.
Teletubbies!
And Andrea and Bruce say they weren't watching World War II documentaries or conversing about military history.
This is an F-18?
No, that one.
So what explains the nightmares and James's strange obsession with airplanes?
I talked to my mom about it a lot of times. My mom had said maybe he's remembering a past life.
What did you say?
Politely, baloney.
Andrea and Bruce of Lafayette, Louisiana are a highly educated, modern couple. To them, the possibility that their little son James was manifesting signs of a former life was, well, a little out there.
You know, having a past life is not the initial conclusion that you come to. You try and figure out any other way he could have. Did he see anything? Has there ever been anything on television, anything that we've discussed?
But as time went by, Andrea didn't know what to believe. Here's James at age 3, going over a plane as if he's doing a pre-flight check. He would continue to say and do things that were puzzling, like the time his mom bought him a toy airplane.
And I said, oh, look, there's a bomb on the bottom of it. He said, that's not a bomb, Mama, that's a drop tank.
A drop tank?
I'd never heard of a drop tank. I didn't know what a drop tank was.
Andrea's mother suggested she look into the work of counselor and therapist Carol Bowman. Bowman has written 2 books, both supporting the proposition that sometimes the dead can be reborn.
We are taught from a very early age in this culture, in the Judeo-Christian culture, that reincarnation doesn't exist. Once you observe this in a child, and the evidence is very compelling, you have to open up to another explanation for what is going on.
Bruce was deeply skeptical.
He said there has to be a logical explanation.
I don't believe in past lives. I don't believe in this stuff.
Here he comes.
But with the violent nightmares recurring 3 and 4 times a week, the Leinigers felt they had to do something. So with guidance from Bowman, they cautiously began to encourage James to share his memories. They say the result was startling.
The nightmares immediately started reducing in frequency. He went down from 3 or 4 times a week to maybe 1 a week, 1 every other week. And at that point was when he started to articulate more about these past life memories.
Seems normal enough, a little boy improving when his troubles are directly addressed. But Bowman says this is more, that James was forthcoming because this is the age when former lives are most easily recalled.
They haven't had the cultural conditioning, the layering over of experience in this life, so that the memories can percolate up more easily. These memories tend to fade between the ages of 5 to 7.
His parents say between the ages of 2 and 4, James would reveal extraordinary details about the life of a former fighter pilot, mostly at bedtime, when he was drowsy.
Bruce said, what happened to your plane? He said, it crashed on fire. And Bruce said, why did your airplane crash? And he said, it got shot. And Bruce said, well, who shot your plane? And I'll never forget the look on his face. He went, oh, the Japanese.
Still, despite these extraordinary stories, Bruce remained dubious. Almost to prove they couldn't be true, he began to piece together the details James was sharing. And what he found, he says, shook him to the core. For in many instances, the stories appeared to match the facts. James seemed to be recalling real events, real people, in the life of a man who'd been dead for almost 60 years.
Coming up, a toddler, just 3 years old. So how does he know the pilots from a World War II squadron?
It was like, holy mackerel. You could have poured my brains out of my ears. I just couldn't believe it.
When Prime Time continues.
With each passing month, little James Leiniger seemed to be peeling back memories of a past life.
Ooh, hey.
Vivid memories that scared and astonished his parents.
Bruce had always said, what kind of plane did you fly? And he said, a Corsair.
Yeah.
He said a Corsair?
He said the word Corsair.
Mm-hmm.
Not only did James remember flying a Corsair, he demonstrated knowledge of the plane's peculiarities, like the time he was flipping through a book about planes when he was 4.
And he got to the Corsair, and he said, that's a Corsair. And he goes, you know what? They used to get flat tires all the time.
In fact, historians and pilots agree that the plane's tires took a lot of punishment on landing. Of course, this is a fact that could easily be found in books or on TV. But then, James began to offer up the kinds of specific details his parents say are harder to explain away.
Another night, Bruce had come in and he said, do you remember where your plane took off? And he said it took off of a boat. Do you remember the name of your boat? Natoma. Do you remember what your name was? And he'd always say, James. But his name is James. It never really occurred to us. We thought he just wasn't understanding the question. So I said, do you remember any friends or anyone else that you flew with? And he said, Jack Larson.
Bruce began doing some research. Almost immediately, he discovered that the Natoma was an actual ship, a small aircraft carrier in the Pacific called the Natoma Bay. And Jack Larson, the Navy buddy little James recalled? Well, it turns out there was a pilot named Jack Larson who served aboard the Natoma Bay. In fact, he's alive and well and living in Arkansas.
And it was like, holy mackerel. I mean, really, you could have poured my brains out of my ears. And I just couldn't believe it.
And there were more clues. Around this time, James began signing crayon drawings and other artwork, James 3.
One day I asked him why he's calling himself James 3. Well, it's because I'm the third James. And every once in a while you ask him that today, and he'll still say the same thing.
And one day, while leafing through a new book about the Battle of Iwo Jima, Bruce turned to an aerial photo of the Pacific Island. James was seated nearby.
He pointed to it and he goes, Daddy, that's where my airplane was shot down. And I said, what? That's my airplane got shot down there, Daddy. And I just went blank. I couldn't say anything.
By then, Bruce had become a man possessed, searching the internet, combing through military records, and interviewing men who served aboard the Natoma Bay. Finally, a breakthrough. He learned that there was just one pilot from the squadron killed at Iwo Jima. That pilot, James M. Houston, Jr. Is this why little James was calling himself James 3?
It just crystallized in my mind. This has to be who we're talking about. You know, my meter of skepticism was starting to go over toward belief.
When little James would describe being shot down, he told of how his plane had sustained a direct hit on the engine.
We had an airplane, and I said, well, can you show me where it was? And he pointed right up to the front of the engine.
That's what makes this man's story so intriguing. His name is Ralph Clarber. Clarber was a rear gunner on a TBM Avenger that flew off the Natoma Bay. On March 3rd, 1945, he took part in a raid near Iwo Jima. As it happens, Clarber's plane was right next to the one flown by James M. Houston, Jr. It was to be Hugh's last mission before leaving for home the following day. As Clarber recalls, the sky was thick with enemy flak.
We experienced pretty heavy anti-aircraft fire, but this was the most intense that I experienced at any time.
Suddenly, a flash near the nose of Houston's plane.
I saw the hit. I would say he was hit head-on. Yeah, right on the middle of the engine.
Just as little James had described it.
So what do you believe now about your son James?
I believe that he had a past life. I believe that in his past life he was James M. Houston, Jr. And he came back because he wasn't finished with something. And that's essentially what I believe.
Dear Bruce and Andrea.
And he's not the only one. This past October, the Leinegers received a letter from a woman named Ann Barron, the sister of pilot James Houston. Andrea and Bruce had contacted her about their little boy. Barron heard about what young James was saying, and she believes.
All of this is still overwhelming. I can only imagine how it has affected you, but I believe, with my love to you, Ann. The child was so convincing and coming up with all these things that there's no way in the world he could know, unless there is a spiritual thing.
I think that the parents are self-deceived, that they're fascinated by the mysterious, and they've built up a fairy tale.
Professor Paul Kurtz of the University of Buffalo heads an organization that investigates claims of the paranormal.
He's overhearing conversations of his parents. He's looking at cues. He may talk to his little friends or hear from neighbors. And then this conviction that builds up that, yes, he was this pilot, and yes, he will come to believe that himself.
Do you ever rack your brain and say, gee, I hope I didn't say anything or do anything that put this in James' head? Do you ever question yourself still or no?
No, because we're talking to a 2-year-old. You know, I mean, what am I going to do? Sit him in a corner and say, listen, now we're going to concoct this elaborate scheme, and you're going to imagine that you went through those things.
I knew what he watched on television. I knew what stories I read to him. I'm a protective, first-time Southern mother. There was no other place he could have been getting this information.
Assuming the Leinegers are acting in good faith, what we have here is a classic conflict of faith versus science. Hard facts against beliefs that often can't be easily explained. there's no doubt where Paul Kurtz stands.
People have a right to believe, surely in America, there's freedom of conscience. On the other hand, do you want to believe in something that is false?
So how do you rationalize a belief in anything bigger than ourselves if you have to fall back on science all the time?
Not simply science, on the facts, on common sense.
Once upon a time, the Leinigers might have agreed, but that was before the amazing stories told by their young son forced them to consider the possibilities and to examine their faith.
Whether you believe in reincarnation or not, it's about the eternal life of the human spirit.
That's right.
And that's something God promises to us. There is something else out there after this. It's not over when you die.
James's vivid recollections are starting to fade as he gets older, but among his prized possessions are two gifts sent to him by pilot James Houston's sister, a bust of George Washington and a model of a Corsair aircraft. They were among the personal effects of James Houston, sent home after the war.
Do you feel differently about James? Has this changed your relationship with him?
No. We have always felt that he's a special little boy because he's our son. He appears to have experienced something that I don't think is unique, but the way it's been revealed is quite astounding. It doesn't change how we think. I don't look at him and say, that's not my son, that's someone else. That's my boy. Good one!
It might be a natural assumption that it's just Buddhists and Hindus who believe in reincarnation, but would it surprise you to know that 1 out of every 4 Americans, Christians and Jewish alike, believe that souls do return again in different bodies? We'll be right back.
Oh,
very,
what do you think about
interesting.
that?
That's not the first time I've heard stories like this. I have 2 friends, one whose grandson was remembers being in the war between the states, and had when he was 2 and 3 years old, had an incredible understanding of what was going on in the South during the war, and it was again a little boy, and he was fighting in that war, and like they pointed out, they tend to, children who have experiences like this, it fades finally, 6, 7 or whatever, it's gone.
Yeah.
And they don't remember it anymore. But if any of you have ever had a dream and you wake up and you think, I've never been in that place before. I've been somewhere where I've never seen in this life. And it's been very vivid and very understanding and not dreamlike at all. Mm-hmm. And you wake up and think, where the Billy Hill did I pick up that? And maybe our essence is bleeding through our imperfect brain, mm-hmm. which we've been told 100 times.
Right.
We have imperfect brains,
yeah.
because we can't remember anything. But our perfect essence is in our bodies.
Yeah.
And sometimes it must bleed through a little bit.
Yeah.
Not for everybody and not all the time.
Right.
But
well, it's interesting to me how when they go in that clip, how they go to the other reporter scientist guy, and he says that the parents are just making it up, or that they are putting these kind of thoughts in a tiny little kid's head. It's like
exactly.
It doesn't. It blows me away to think, well, how can people say that? They don't even know them, number one, and they don't know this little child, and it happens more often than you realize.
When we think about science is way ahead of religion, excuse me.
Yeah.
when I think of during dictionaries, for example, in the early 1800s, uranium was described as a useless metal not found in the United States. Useless. Well, it took the Second World War to finally find out maybe there's something you can do with this uranium that might be pretty spectacular.
Yeah.
Pretty spectacular. And science is having to change all the time. Mm-hmm. When I think of what's happened in the last 20 years, it's crazy what science has done in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And when you think of, here's Joseph Smith, bless his heart. He has a vision, and he talks to Christ and comes out of that grove, what can he say? He couldn't tell anybody anything.
Yeah.
They think he was absolutely lost his mind.
Yep.
And if we think that science is ahead of everything else, not necessarily. Anyway, that was terrific. Thanks, Tony, for that. For those of you who have real problems with Christopher and Hiram, maybe, just maybe, it's exactly like he said. And when he was working on Joseph's book, he had the benefits of his own memory when he was Hiram.
Yeah.
But Christopher has his memories back. He's the only one on the planet that has that. Only completely human man or woman on the planet who has memories back.
Yeah. So you can imagine what his life every day is like. You know?
Exactly.
You can't even imagine. That's the problem. You can't even fathom how one would deal with that.
Well, can we talk for just a minute about Christopher?
Sure.
This might be last chance.
Yeah.
For talking
and you got the chance.
When he's not here to tell me
now.
To tell me to please be quiet, Ida.
Oh, we have a phone call. He's calling to tell you.
No.
Okay, let's see. Marvelous Work and a Wonder.
Hi, this is Monica Smith. I had a question for Ida.
Hey, okay. Monica.
Go ahead.
I was just wondering if you could describe to me what, I've just kind of always wondered what was going through your mind when you spoke to Elder Jeffrey R. Holland, when he called you or why he called you, and if you could just describe that story and what was going through your mind at the time.
Okay, yes. I had talked to one of my siblings about the sealed portion. And he called me back and had talked to Elder Holland. And he said, you need to call and talk to him. You need to talk to him. He said, don't read this book. Don't read this book. And when I hung up from that, I was in a real quandary. Because if I didn't call Jeff, then he would think that I was concerned and nervous and, whatever. But if I did call him, and he indicated to me what he had indicated to my brother, I was concerned about that. Because if he said those things, and I have to tell you that at that particular time, I had gone to court with Christopher on a number of occasions because he had been mandated to clear a lot of things in the court, some things that were said about him that were not true. And I thought, what if I ever was in a position where there was a court case and they put Jeff on the stand and then he put Ida on the stand, and if Ida says Jeff said this and Jeff said no, I didn't, what would I do about that? And I thought, if I do call Jeff, and this was selfish on my part, but I thought I need to protect myself, just in case I ever got in a court situation. And so I knew that if I did call Jeff, I would have to tape it. Mm-hmm. And I was upset about that, but I thought, I'm between a dark, what is it expression? A rock and a hard place. Mm-hmm. And so I did what I did, and so we had the conversation.
And what was your relationship with Jeff at that time, or what had been your experience with him?
Well, I had known Jeff for many, many years, and after Dallin Oaks finished his stint as president of BYU, Jeff came next. And I had known Jeff for years through California stuff and whatever. And he was my boss. We were very good friends. I mean, I adored Jeff Holland. He was a terrific speaker. I loved him as a man. He was as my boss, as a mentor, and so that's how I knew him. And so, so I did tape the conversation. Have you listened to it?
Oh yes, I actually transcribed it.
Oh, okay. Okay, yes. Well, that's why.
Okay, and so when he mentioned in there, you shouldn't be recording this, you just understood that, if it ever got to court, that would be his word against yours, basically.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And his conversation with you didn't influence you at all, apparently, to not believing in this whole portion.
Well, no, because I'd read it.
Right.
I mean, I'd read the book, and I could no more deny that. I couldn't. No. And so that's how. Okay. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for calling, Monica. That was a great question. I appreciate it. Thanks for calling in and listening today.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, that was good. And it's funny that she would call and mention that, because we had thought the same thing ourselves, at early on when we heard about that. And, unfortunately, when people are attacking your sanity or your ability to act as a free-willed human being, you have to protect yourself to make sure that, because it's your word against his, and who's going to question a general authority, right?
And by that point in time, I was pretty sure who he was. Mm-hmm. Can I talk about that just a little bit?
Yeah, please do.
I know that we don't have our memories back, and when we say we know something is true, we believe, because we don't know. We can't say, I know that there is a God. I know that there's this, because our memories are gone, and we believe very strongly, but knowing is something else. So that said, as much as a fully human person is, and I'm one of those, knows something, I know who Christopher is. And because I know that, not because I have met the man, but because I have read what he has given to us. I have read the books. And I know that he's the person who is to be the last true messenger on the planet, and give us the information that we were promised that we would get before Christ would come a second time. And it's up to us whether we accept it or not. Nobody's going to force us. Nobody's going to make us do anything. Which is why he's told us don't preach. And here I am. I'm not preaching.
We're not preaching.
I'm not
No
preaching.
here.
I'm just suggesting that if we really want to know the truth, and if we understand that we are already gods, we can't remember anything about that either, and we're going through this mortal experience to give us things. What's the word I'm after? Experience,
yes.
Just to get experience.
Yes.
And so here we are, and we wanted to know for sure that before the Christ would come, we would give an opportunity to get our memories back, to find out, to remember, to get the truth. And that's why Christopher is here. And he's got the hardest job on the planet. There is no human being, really, besides the Savior, who's had a harder job than Christopher has right now. Because it's his responsibility to get real truth to people in the world. And most people don't care diddly squat about real truth. They're not looking. They don't want it. Even when they hear about it, they think they go away from it. They shun it. They won't pick up on it because they don't remember that they wanted it. So here we are. We have until 2145, however many lives we will have to get the job done. And we cannot get to the end of this and saying, well, if it had been on the earth when I was here, I would have got it. If we were, and we didn't. And it's up to us. It's our responsibility. And it's hard to get anybody to feel there's a responsibility that they don't acknowledge exists. So that's a hard job.
It is a hard job, and believe me, we've been around him, enough to know that we see the struggles that he has, and we see how hard it is to do what he has to do, and he bears the burden of it, and that's why he tells us no preaching.
That's right.
No preaching.
That's right. That's
right. But I wanted to ask you. So when you say, Christopher, or you read the book, and what does mean? Does that mean your Holy Spirit, or does that mean your essence? Explain to people maybe that the difference between I believe or I think. When you say how is it that you know?
That's a really good question, and I'm not sure how to answer that.
I'm sorry.
Except that I just know who he is. As I said, his job is unbelievably difficult. Right. Knowing what he knows, and knowing what the person himself is. Christopher, if what he would really love to do is just to live his life, love people, that's who he is. He loves people. He's kind. He has the most tender heart on the planet. And when he's using his sword, he knows how to use it. He really knows how to use it, and it can cut both ways, and it can be devastating. He can do that. He can wield that. He's the one who's on the cloud up there with the sword in his hand, mm-hmm. And that's his job. Yeah, and he is very, very, very good at that. But I think it takes a toll on his human self, because he is completely human. He's the only completely human on the planet that has his memories back. And so when you think of what his job is, and with these mortals, who he looks upon as Alzheimer patients because they don't remember stuff anyway.
Well, it sounds like we have another call here, so let's see who we've got on the phone. Thanks for calling the Marvelous Work and a Wonder. Hello?
Hi.
Hi.
Yes, hello. Hi. Well, I'm a little bit nervous, but I wanted to make a comment. I've been, are we on live right now?
Yes, uh-huh.
Okay.
Don't be nervous. It's okay.
If you turn your thing down so you're just listening to us on the air, on the phone.
On the phone.
Okay. Yes. So, I guess discovered this work 2.5 months ago, and it was really shocking for me because I haven't been looking for it.
Uh-huh.
But, as I reading it even from the first pages, and it was really compelling to me that it was true, and I've been praying for it, and and I know it's true, and even reading a little bit of other books, it seems a little bit hard for me to grasp and understand because I haven't finished the seal portion yet, but reading it, but it is true. It is true, and listening to you and the program just helped me reassure the first thing that was really hard for me was the reincarnation part of it. I think that was the hardest thing.
Uh-huh.
and but it makes sense, as it has been explained in this program. It makes sense how it happens for each one of us. And again, I really appreciate you guys taking the time and explaining things like this, and in a soft way. Sometimes when listening to Christopher, it's a little bit hard, how he explains things, but it's true. It is true. And so I appreciate taking the time for doing that. And I'm still listening to the program. I'm still learning, and so I'm grateful. That's all I wanted to say. And I'm grateful there is somebody like you explaining, with your history in the church, just explaining how if you're looking for the truth, you can get it. My husband was the one who was looking for it, and he shared it with me, and then that's why it was.
Well, thank you.
It has been shocking for the first times, but now I'm learning more and learning more, and my eyes are being opened, and my understanding enlarged, and so I can understand more things. And I know we don't know all things, and if we're truly with an honest heart look for it, we find things.
Well, thank you so much for calling. I really appreciate it, and don't be nervous. You'll have to call back sometime and talk to Christopher, because he.
Oh yeah.
Don't be afraid to do that. He's a very, very gentle spirit. He just uses his sword when he has to.
Actually, we have some emails, I guess, that we've talked.
No.
But I haven't met him, so it's just that it's so new for me still.
Sure.
But I know it's true, and I'm willing to whatever it takes to be involved in the work, and it's just. I also have a great desire to share it with a lot of people, but I know I can't.
Yeah.
It's.
I know.
That's probably the hardest part.
It is the hardest part, because you want to shout it from the housetops, but don't, for your own sake.
Yeah.
So just 2.5 months you've known about it?
What's that?
You've just known about it for 2.5 months?
Yeah.
Well, good for you.
And where are you calling from?
Oh gosh, I guess it's I'm really cool. I'm someday I'll be brave enough.
Okay, but you're living in the States somewhere?
Yes.
Okay.
The same. Utah.
Yeah. Well, whatever. It's okay. But anyway, thank you very, very much for calling. And
yes. Thanks so much.
Continue with your reading. And
what's that?
Just continue reading.
Uh-huh.
And when Christopher gets back with his journal, you'll want to read his journals too. You know how to do that, right?
I read a few, probably 2 entries.
Oh, good. Okay.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your phone call, and keep tuned in and keep reading, and like you said, read all the books, read the other books too, because they're going to help you as well. So, but thank you so much for calling in, and please call in again sometime in the future if you ever feel inclined to, or if you have a question. It's always great to hear from the people out there, so don't be nervous, don't be afraid. We love it.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, that's so fun to hear from people. It makes it all worthwhile. I mean, and we're so lucky that we have all this archived for the future, and for the future generations to be able to hopefully find it even easier. We just want to make it as accessible as possible, and to be able to share it all around the world for everyone. So it's
yes,
wonderful
indeed.
when we get to hear that. It makes me happy. So
yes.
But we wanted to talk a little bit too. We have a little bit time left. When we one of the first things that we learned about you when we met you was how. Well, when you discovered the sealed portion and you met Christopher, and the sequence of events that happened right after that, I want to explain to the people out there you have been basically shunned. I mean, you were talking about Jeffrey Holland and how he's such a great friend of yours, along with several other people, prominent members of the church, and very, very close friends that you've not been able to see or speak with, and haven't spoken with you or even attempted to try.
That's right.
At all since this discovery for you. And we have a little video that we want to share with you so that you understand kind of who these people are. Some of these people, not all of them, but these are very close friends of Ida's, and you can listen in their own words what they're saying. So watch this now.
In August of 2008, a friend of mine, a dear friend that I have known since California days, we've known each other now for 60 years. Well, nearly 60 years. Anyway, she and her husband had been in Israel for a 18-month mission. And she was coming home, and I wanted to get the group together and visit. Ever since I was retired, we would try to get together at least once a year, a couple of times a year, people from BYU and whatnot, that we'd work together and all of these things. And so I invited everybody, and I couldn't get anybody on the phone to respond to a date, and which I should have been smart enough to figure out by then. But anyway, so I called again, left another message. And then I got a letter in the mail from 7 of them, who said that because of some decisions I had made, it would not be possible. Well, he'll put the letter up there so you can read it. And I realized, okay, I had wanted to talk to those women because I've known them for 30 years, worked closely with them for 20 years.
When I first met President Wade, I was not a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I had gone to Brigham Young University in Provo to work on a degree and knew nothing about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Now, she told me a long time later that the main reason she told me that was that every time she saw me at a professional meeting, I had a cigarette in my hand. And she knew that wouldn't go over very big at BYU. And she also knew that my favorite drink was wine. And so instead of just saying to me, we have a word of wisdom and you can't smoke and you can't drink, she suggested that I come and that I look around. I did do that several months later, and I didn't keep a regular journal, but I wrote on a little calendar after 2 days on campus, I know I should go to BYU to school, and I'll even be able to give up my much-loved wine for what I'll receive in return. People wanted to give me things, mostly a Book of Mormon. They wanted to tell me about the church, and in Salt Lake City is the Visitors Center. Some of you have been there. And I was taken so many times to the Visitors Center in Salt Lake City that I knew everything they told you. They started by saying if you wanted to join the tour, to meet at the Adam and Eve statue. And I knew all the rest of the things they said. In fact, I wondered where you got those little plastic badges and how I could get my name on it, because I thought I could take people through the Visitors Center and tell them about it. The only difference was I didn't know whether all that stuff was true or not. I was there at BYU for nearly a year and a half when in a summer school class of students just like you, we became very close. And on the last day of class, they asked me to come to the front and said they had a gift they wanted to give me. Now, if you've tried to wrap up a book, it's pretty hard to disguise a book, so I knew right away they were giving me a book. But they asked me to open it, and I wasn't prepared for what it was, the book, what kind of a book it was. When I opened it up, it was a leather-bound triple combination. and down at the bottom in gold it said, Carolyn J. Rasmus. I was not only touched by the gift, because these were students, and many of you know you don't have a lot of money when you're a student. And I knew that it was an expensive gift and that they had had to sacrifice to give it to me. And while all this was running through my mind, they said, open it up, read what we wrote inside. And this is what they'd written. Dear Sister Rasmus, you've shared with us things that are important and special to you. And in return, we want to share with you things that are important and special to us. And we give it to you with a lot of love and respect. Sincerely your fans, BYU Summer School, 1970. Do you know why I was so touched with the gift? Because it was given to me in love by people who cared about me. And I've often talked about that as the gift that made the difference. Now, I'm not going to tell my whole conversion story. It probably isn't a lot different than some of yours. I had a lot of ups and downs, a lot of good times and a lot of hard times. And when I made the decision to be baptized, I really wasn't sure. I didn't have a testimony that the church was true. But somehow it seemed right to me. And when I was with people who were members of the church, I felt good inside. And I decided that I wanted to be baptized. And I was baptized on March 6th, 1971. And from there, everything went downhill. It wasn't a good experience. I went shortly after that back to my home in Ohio. And my mother said, through tears, just crying, she said, how could you have done this? How could you join that church? She never called it by name, she called it that church. And then she said, you've given up everything we've ever taught you. And I tried to explain to her that I really hadn't, but that there was more to learn. But she didn't want to hear anything about that and said to me, I don't want you ever to talk to me about your church again. I went from there to a convention, to a professional meeting, and a friend of mine that I was excited to share with her that I'd joined the church said to me, those Mormons really brainwashed you, didn't they? And then she suggested that I was stronger than that and began to say to me, how could you have let them do that? And someone else said to me, those Mormons have high-pressure salesmanship. I bet they forced you into joining their church. I don't know whether you've ever had an experience like that, but if somebody plants just that much doubt in your mind, all of a sudden it takes over. And I began to wonder. I forgot all the wonderful feelings that I'd had. And I began to wonder if, in fact, I had been pressured, or maybe I had been brainwashed. When you have feelings like that, it's easy not to pray and not to study the scriptures. And I felt so miserable that I can remember for more than a month going to bed every night crying, and in the morning I'd wake up and I'd still be crying. And finally, after nearly 5 weeks of this, I went to the man who baptized me and I said, joining the church was the worst decision I ever made. I used to be happy and now I'm miserable. And I carried on and on and on. And then he looked at me and asked me a question that I've never forgotten. He said to me, Carolyn, what are you not doing that prevents the Spirit of the Lord from being with you? You know, lots of times when things aren't going well, people say to us, well, what are you doing? Suggesting that we're maybe doing something that would be disobedient. That isn't what he asked me. He said, what are you not doing? And then he said to me, "Are you praying?" And I was mad. "No," I said, "I'm not praying." "Are you reading the scriptures?" "No," I said, "I'm not." And then he gave me advice I've never forgotten. He said, "Go home and immediately go to your room and get down on your knees and pray, and tonight begin to read the scriptures and read them every day." Now that's the same kind of advice that people give you and that I'd heard many, many times. But because of my great respect for this man, I followed his counsel. I don't have any miraculous stories to tell you about seeing a vision or having some wonderful thing happen. Nothing happened, but I continued to do what he said. I prayed and read the scriptures. And then, nearly a month after I had been faithful in following his counsel, I happened to be walking across Temple Square in Salt Lake City, and I was by myself, and I paused for just a minute and glanced up at the temple spires. And it was as if somebody stood beside me and said, "The church is true, and you need never doubt again." I don't have any miraculous stories to tell you about seeing a vision or having some wonderful thing happen. I don't know what your experience will be or how it will come, but I am convinced that all of us, whether we're born into the church, born under the covenant, or join the church at some later time, must do some things, prayer and scripture study, that help prepare our spirits to receive a witness of the truth. I believe that's what it's like for each of us. And so this morning, I'm grateful to be here to bear testimony of the truthfulness of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and of this important work. And then to bear testimony to you about who you really are, how important you are. It's not by accident that you're here this morning, that you're here at Brigham Young University, Hawaii campus, or that you're living now in 1988. President Benson has called you a marked generation. And this is what he said. While your generation will be comparable in wickedness to the days of Noah, do you remember how wicked the world was in the days of Noah? So wicked that the Lord cleansed the earth with a flood. But President Benson said the world will be that wicked, but there is a major difference this time. For God has saved for his final inning some of his stronger and more valiant children who will help bear off the kingdom triumphantly. The final outcome is certain, says President Benson. The forces of righteousness will triumph. But what remains to be seen is where each of us personally will stand now and in the future. You will have trials and temptations, and to pray with you that you will be strong. You might remember in the Old Testament there's a story of a woman named Esther. And in the situation, Queen Esther was willing to risk her life in order to plead for the Jews. And her husband, her cousin, Mordecai, because she was willing to do that, said to her, "Who knows but what thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this.
We can never afford to be cruel or indifferent or ungenerous because we are all connected, even if it is in a pattern that only God sees. I am part of the pattern. May we all deal kindly with one another, seeking in our lives the blessing of the Apostle Paul, that our hearts might be comforted, being knit together in love. I pray humbly and sincerely in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Does the Mormon Church shun people who leave?
No, of course we don't. We don't use that word, and we don't know that practice. If I had a son this very day, given the office that I have and the visibility that means, if I had a son or a daughter who left the church or was alienated or had a problem, I can tell you I would not cut that child out of family life.
And when all of this happened to me, it was with one particular that we'd been very close at BYU, and I had called and left a couple of messages for her, just saying I really need to visit, whenever we can do that. Several times in 2007, and she had never called me and never set up things to do that. And then by the time of August of 2008, we still hadn't gotten together. And I figured by then she must know about it, but not by me. So when I got this letter, cold in the mail, they couldn't, that if I was able to make changes or whatever, that maybe, but right now they could not associate with me. And so I thought, okay. I wasn't angry. I really was not angry. I was really disappointed. I mean, I was disappointed that after all that we had gone through together in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s at BYU and all of these things, that they would have picked up, one of them would have picked up the phone and said, "Ida, what the hell are you doing? What have you done? What were you thinking?" And they didn't. So after no conversation with them about any of this, the letter saying they can't associate with me anymore. And I was disappointed that they couldn't do that. I was not angry with them. I felt great pity for them at that point, because I thought, I had come to the point by that time in doing what I did and leaving the church and everything else, that because all my life I have not wanted, I wanted to be able to face the Savior. I wanted to be able to face Joseph and my great-great-grandfather, Hiram. I wanted them to be happy with me. I didn't want to disappoint those three people. And I really felt strongly about that. And so then I thought of what they're going to have to face when they have to face the Savior, and when they have to face Joseph. And when, by the time they get their memories back and that happens with them, they'll remember, you know that Ida Smith that we used to work with, and all these things we did, and the hundreds of times we went to the temple together with, she knew this all of the time, and we never asked her about it. And I think I do not want to be in their shoes when they have to do this. I really don't. And over the last 6 years, I've thought, I don't want to do anything that I'm going to be embarrassed to have to face with people that care most to me. And so I thought, okay, if that's the way they are, I'm not going to impose upon them or make it necessary that they talk to me or be with me and be uncomfortable. I didn't want to do that. I don't want to do that. If somebody doesn't want to be with me, you know, that's fine. I just don't want to be, I don't want to make anybody uncomfortable. So I wasn't angry, I was just sad and disappointed. But then with my own family, you know, they won't read it either. And you can lead a horse to water, but you can't take him to drink, and you can lead a horse to real truth, but you can't make him read. And it's not my job. I can't make it, I shouldn't want to make anybody do anything they don't want to do. And so I've been content, you know. And I know Christopher sometimes, I think it bothers him that these things happen, but I'm not fragile, you know, and I'm okay. And feeling shunned is okay. I mean, if people don't want the truth and they don't want to hear about it, and they don't want to be around me, then, you know, that's fine. I have these wonderful friends, you know, right here, and I'm content as far as that's concerned. So let me talk for just a bit about these other books and how I reacted to them. The sealed portion, as I said, I used up 2 red ballpoint pens, underlining, starring, and sometimes I'd read just a verse 2 or 3 times. It was slow reading when you read a book that way, but oh my gosh, I loved that book. And the next book that came to my attention was when Christopher was, I hadn't read the 666 book yet. When I had broken my leg, I had gotten several calls from Senator Bennett's office, and they wanted to get something to me. And I had, oh gosh, I had taken the sealed portion up to show Senator Bennett, and then he brought, long story short, he brought me a manuscript he'd written on testimonies thing of the Book of Mormon that he'd written, and he wanted me to critique it. So I took the time to do that. And I don't know who had contacted him, whether my brother or whatever, you know, to do the, we've got to pull Ida back, you know, that whatever. Whatever they're trying to do, I think that the church was concerned after my excommunication. They could tell from that encounter with my bishop and my stake president, I'm just not going to change your mind. And so, what do we do to shut her up? And you have to keep in mind that 2 of the 12 were presidents of BYU. I served under BYU under 2 of them. They knew me very well. They know I'm a fairly strong character. They know I'm not going to back down, you know, that nobody's going to push me around. They knew that. And so how do you, what's the expression when you want to neutralize the situation? I don't know what they had in mind or what they thought they could do. I don't know. But I knew that they didn't want people coming and talking to me. So all of the things behind the scenes with trying to do this, I'm not privy to. I don't have the rocks. You know what I'm saying? Wouldn't be able to do anything with them if I did. So neutralize this. They got rid of the Women's Institute, you know. And when it happened, I thought, does that have anything to do with me? Does that really have anything? Is that my fault? They're getting away with that? I can't prove anything there. But I know they don't want people coming and talking to me.
Have you reached out to any of them since?
Me?
Have you reached out to any of them since that all happened, or
to who?
To
anybody?
Any of the people that
has anyone even tried contacting or anything?
Well, the people who signed the letter made it very clear they couldn't associate with me, and I thought, I am not going to impose upon them. There was one they tried to get to sign it, and she refused. I have a picture of them from one of our yearly Christmas gettings together. They contacted her, but this other one I had known back in California days, so I'd known her since the 50s. We've known each other a long time, mid-50s. And I don't talk to her about it because she hasn't asked me questions. I would love to talk to her, but she doesn't bring. I just said, I'll never bring it up. If you want to talk to me anytime, but I will never bring it up. And I don't, and I won't. And that's not easy not to, because I would, I mean, I love these books. I love what's in them. The information is just information, folks. Jeez. But if they don't want to read, you can't make them read. And if they're comfortable with where they are, then you're going to have to let them face what they want to face. I can't do it for anybody else. As much as I would like to sometimes. It's not my job, But I know that a lot of people who follow the marvelous work and a wonder have been shunned by friends and whatnot. And I don't think the church wants any of its members to be talking to any of the people who are reading these books. I just don't think they do. So, where do you want me to go now from here?
Can you express your feelings that you have for the people that have shunned you? I mean, because I
know they were my friends.
I know.
I feel sorry for them. I'm not angry with them. I feel, if you don't want to agree with me, I can handle that. I feel good enough about me that I don't have to. I have no responsibility to rearrange me in anybody else's head. If that's where if they rearrange me in their own heads, that's their privilege. We all have the right to do that. We have free agency. We can do whatever we want to do what makes us happy. And if that makes them happy, then that's fine. I have not spent time and energy at all being angry with them. I just have not. I'm not angry with them. I'm not angry with Jeff and Dallin. My heart breaks for those two men. I will put this on the tape. When when the 2nd of December meeting happened in 2012, last year, he was giving the world the temple information. Anybody could have gone. And so in November, for the annual Joseph F. Smith family reunion in Salt Lake, I took some flyers up for that event. And I knew that Dallin would be there because his wife was going to be one of the speakers. And I saw her when I first got there. And I gave the flyer to her. And she looked at it and she said, Ida, because I love you, I will give this to him. But she said, you need to know he will not read anything that doesn't come from the First Presidency. I felt just like I'd been wounded for him. It just broke my heart. I thought, oh my gosh, this bright, brilliant man. It made me just sick to my stomach. And then at the end of that meeting, I saw him alone in the hallway. So I just talked to him for just very, very briefly. Gave me a hug, and it was very cordial. And I said, Dallin, I said, I gave something to your wife. I said, I just don't want you to be blindsided. But I knew that he would come and he wouldn't be there. But I thought, nobody can ever come back and say, Ida, why didn't you tell me? You knew me. Why didn't you talk to me? And I you know, what can I say? You had the opportunity. You knew where I was. You knew what I knew, and you didn't ask me. And those two men know me very well. They worked with me, and I don't know what else I could do for them. I can't. So, but angry with people who, no, I'm not angry with my siblings. I love my siblings. You know, my baby brother is an incredible human being. And he's done wonderful, wonderful things with kids and his generosity and everything else. And I thought for sure he would be willing. And when he called me and said, Jeff said, don't read it. I thought, does that mean you're not going to? Jeff wanted me not to read it. He said, don't read it, don't read it. And I thought, how can I not read it? How can a book hurt me? I mean, the worst book in the whole world that's full of profanity and everything else, it's just information. So it's hard. I just don't understand why it's so hard for people to be open and willing to learn and reading. You know, what's so hard? What is really so hard? But you can't do that for another human being. I was rereading in this one in Isaiah the 29 again. It is so powerful when it talks about the marvelous work and a wonder that will take place in the latter days, if you're ready for it, if you're open for it. Joseph makes it crystal clear in the words in Isaiah 29. The church has this book now. Do they ever read this version? Or are they stuck with the King James? Because if they're stuck with King James, it isn't in there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it's frustrating. It's frustrating to know as much as I know and I can't transplant that in anybody else.
To the saints of this dispensation, the Lord gave important instructions to seek balanced learning. The terms in the scriptures are study and faith. For example, in Doctrine and Covenants 88:118, The Lord invites us, "Seek ye diligently and teach one another words of wisdom. Yea, seek ye out of the best books words of wisdom. Seek learning, even by study and also by faith." This identical invitation is repeated twice more in the Doctrine and Covenants. To me, the terms learning by study and learning by faith say that self-reliance comes from both efforts. Study is the other oar by which we can seek and obtain knowledge. Each woman needs to develop both gifts, the gift of faith and the gift of study, to the utmost of her capacity. We need to exercise both study and faith to become self-reliant. I think that the Holy Ghost cannot give us some answers until we are actively seeking knowledge. Perhaps our study and faith may be resources for a searching sister, but let us never judge another. We do not know her circumstances. We do not know what soul searching went into her decisions. Whether she is a sister alone, whether she and her husband, if she is married, went jointly to the Lord for guidance, or whether she was responsible largely alone, let us be accepting and supportive as sisters. Let us trust the Lord, trust ourselves, and trust each other that we are trying to do the best we can. We need all the strength we can find for our daily trials. Let us not add our disapproval to our sisters' burdens, and as we struggle with our own burdens, let us not diminish our strength by accepting the perhaps thoughtless judgments of others. Let us value everyone's contributions. Let us not exclude a sister, whatever her life choices and whatever her circumstances. Let us express trust that she used both study and prayer in making her decisions, and provide a supportive environment in which she can carry out those decisions. Peter's last words to the saints of his day are, "Counsel to grow in grace and in the knowledge of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ." And King Benjamin urged his people to grow in the knowledge of the glory of him that created you, or in the knowledge of that which is just and true. Sisters, we need to keep growing. Part of our moral responsibility is to increase in learning and wisdom. Some of you may feel that your chance to gain more learning has passed you by. It is not so. You can learn at any age. No one individual has enough power to control all of her life circumstances, but she can meet those circumstances with confidence if she has the appropriate tools and trusts herself to use them properly. My dear sisters, trust in the Lord. Life will bring you many difficult and even frightening decisions. Follow the Spirit in making those decisions in consultation with those who are also affected by those decisions. Seek information from the knowledgeable. Seek priesthood blessings when you desire to supplement your own pleadings with the Lord. And when your course is clear, pursue it with all your might and find joy and rejoicing in it. May we love and trust and serve each other by study and also by faith. I pray in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Well, it's kind of hard to talk after that one. I know we're going a little over today, but I think that's okay. She says it so perfectly.
Yeah, she does.
And I've watched it before, and I thought the same thing before, and I thought, were they thinking about you at the time? Because you couldn't say it any better. And you did exactly what she's telling you to do. Exactly. Without question. And yet these are the people that are on that letter.
No.
And these are the women that have shunned you. And thank goodness that you are the woman that you are, because I don't know how many people could take that and be so graceful as you.
Well, how can I not be grateful?
That's another reason why, Ida, you're so special.
Well,
you're incredible. I mean,
all
that's what I
I
mean.
All I did was read the books.
And that's all it takes. But it's just, it's so simple, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's right.
And I know there's some prominent writers out there that have written, and it's kind of the same thing, you know, that they're neutralizing the situation by calling you crazy. Is that what neutralizing the situation is? There's no other evidence out there. There's no other things that you can say. There's nothing else, you know. But if you read this post, just real quick, we're gonna wrap this up here. But there's a post here. Is there an after the age of reason limit for very old LDS church members? So. I read a very interesting article in the Salt Lake City Weekly, Sealed Fate, Burning in Ida's, it's hard to see, to Christopher Nemelka's new spiritual order. It details how Smith, nearly 80 and a descendant of LDS Church co-leader Hiram Smith, has converted to the claims of Nemelka, who says he's translated the sealed portion of the Book of Mormon. As a result, Smith, a former head of the BYU Women's Research Institute, has rejected her church, given her home and many possessions to Nemelka, and was excommunicated from the LDS Church in 2008. One incident that may have prompted the excommunication was Smith taping a phone conversation she had with LDS Apostle Jeffrey Holland, who tried to talk her out of following Nemelka, who proclaims the usual, multiple revelations, and claims that the current LDS Church is in apostasy, etc. Nemelka, who has a criminal record, seems a hustler to me, but he obviously appeals to an elderly woman who never married and seems to have slipped into very eccentric behavior. According to the article, Nemelka has at least 80 followers of his restored sealed plates version of the Book of Mormon. But this is not really about Nemelka or his doctrine. Instead, just as there is an age of reason standard for baptism, 8 years old, I wonder if there should be an age of reason test for elderly members of the LDS Church who do something like Ida Smith did that seems more a case of advanced age than apostasy. Excommunication is probably the hardest thing for a lifelong cultural Mormon to deal with. It would devastate me if I were ever cast out of my church, and I can imagine the heartbreak of Smith's close family, who are left only to pray that she changes her mind before she dies. Frankly, that's really not possible, I believe, for Smith, who seems to serenely enjoy the new reality she has created for herself. But it would break my heart, as well as my siblings, to have to deal with my elderly parents, both of sound mind and strong members of the LDS faith, suddenly fall prey, if their minds deteriorate, to a smooth talker who tears away a lifetime of spiritual accomplishment in the church. Recently, Ida Smith gave her burial plot to Nemelka, who will now be buried next to a large obelisk dedicated to Hiram Smith's memory. Ida Smith apparently believes that Nemelka is the reincarnation of Hiram Smith. Does anyone seriously believe that her apostasy from the LDS Church is the result of a rational decision? I know a very faithful Latter-day Saint senior citizen woman of sound mind who believes Satan is the God of the Old Testament. She's not shy about that belief. Church leaders have dealt with it tactfully. She holds a temple recommend and remains sealed to her elderly husband. It would be a sin, in my opinion, to pursue her eccentric, incorrect belief to the point of excommunication. Although I don't know all of the facts of the Smith case, and what I've written is a suggestion, not a criticism, I wonder if Ida Smith's late-in-life switch merits debate on when a church member no longer becomes responsible for his or her beliefs. The age of reason starts at 8, but when does it end? So, you know, what can you say about that? I mean,
or here's someone that doesn't even know her.
And yeah, this is someone that doesn't know you.
No.
This is someone that's probably never met you, probably ever even spoken with you. Yet they can write things like this and assume that, you know, your mind's deteriorated and that you've been taken over by Christopher in some way.
Well, it's a good example of explaining why anything that's said about Christopher is
exactly
people who've never met him, never talked to him, never read anything that he has written.
That's right.
And yet they will have a lot to say about what they think he is.
Yes, exactly.
Crazy.
So, and then
We've gone way over.
We've gone over. I know that you have this opportunity that you wanted to say something about what Christopher's like, or
well, no, I think I
you
basically just covered that.
Okay.
He has a tender, gentle heart, but he has a sickle, and his job is to use the sickle.
Okay.
And that will cut both ways. But if we will just listen to what he is giving us and take it to heart and be willing to become as little children so we can understand what he's telling us, it's all up to us.
That's right.
That's it.
That's right. Well, thanks again for
Thank
being
you.
here. And I've had a lot of fun with you, even though this is hard for us. I mean, it's hard for me because, you know, but either way, I'm truly grateful, you know, that you've been here and that you've been able to share your story with everyone, because I know it's important.
Thank Tony for all the stuff he put together. He's amazing. He is amazing. And I know everybody's going to be very glad that Christopher is back next week. You don't have to hear anything else about me.
Well, but as a reminder to people, because, you know, your information is on the website. If in the future, you know, someone has a question or they want to contact you because maybe they have something in common or a comment or a struggle, is that okay if they contact you?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. And that's kind of what that's there for. You know, there's a lot of people that have got their information on there, so, you know, you don't have to feel like. So, yeah. But thanks again for joining us today. Thanks for all the callers that called in. We really appreciate that. And we look forward to seeing Christopher the Messenger next week. And I hope you all have a wonderful holiday this next week. Thanks again.
Across the blue sky, thunder's not far behind. So don't despair. I'm right there. Say a prayer, my angel's watching over you. From a place in your heart and a place in your dreams, place under stars, we fly with open wings. Place in your heart where we laugh and we cry. Place in your soul only you can find. Know that it's true. Watching over you. The night wind blows in, so open your heart. The storm's ending, your heart's mending, messenger descending. My angel's watching over you. From a place in your heart and a place in your dreams, a place under stars, we fly with open wings. Place in your heart where we laugh and we cry. Place in your soul only you can find. Know that it's true. My angel's watching over you. I'm sending all my love to you. It's easy to believe with faith to hold on to. You can feel heaven's light on your face. Come shining through. My angel's watching over you.
As a driver, you probably spend a lot on your car. You spend hours a week just getting to work and back, and you spend a lot of money on gas. Thousands of dollars a year, in fact. And we're just talking about driving to work. Also, think about the time and cost of oil changes and routine engine repairs. And while you're putting so much into your vehicle, harmful exhausts are what's coming out. Pollution is rising, and our future has never been in more danger. What's the real cost of harming the environment? And if there's a solution to save our planet and your budget, what's that really worth to you? Introducing Filta Green International, a company that finally has a real solution. Be a positive change in the world without changing your lifestyle with Filta Green's complete proactive maintenance program, the only total solution to save the environment and save you money.